a totally twisted, deep-fried Texas redneck trailer park murder story. How comfortable are you with that, with the slogan for Killer Joe?
Well, I didn't write it,
Of course.
but I guess that's what early audiences, that's how they described it.
Yeah.
And I think that David Dinerstein, who's the head of the distribution company that's distributing Killer Joe, he got that as feedback from some of the early audiences where the film was screened.
Yeah.
And so he adapted it as an advertising phrase.
And you're happy with it? You don't think it misrepresents the film?
Well, it'd be hard to represent it otherwise. What are you going to say about it? It's not a dirty picture.
Yeah.
What can you say about it? I would have said perhaps something more provocative in the ad phrase. I would have said something like, keep stroking. Or
get boned.
Get boned. Get boned is what I thought should be the phrase, but I think that was a little too far out for you.
Yeah. And it's doubly funny once you've seen the film why it's so darn appropriate. So, yeah, the thing, what I found really refreshing about it was that this is an all-out black comedy. I mean, it's just, it's got all sorts of sex and nudity and violence like, nobody's business. Tons and tons of blood. Everything that you could actually, ask. And you've got laughs on top of it. I was wondering, what is a distinguished gentleman like yourself, Bill Friedkin, making a movie like this at your age?
Because it has the same things that you can read in the New Testament. Sin, evil, God, redemption, suffering, punishment, retribution. It has all those wonderful things that are in the New Testament on virtually every page.
And more laughs, though, than the Bible, I'd say.
More laughs, yes. But it's a powerful story about people that I know and knew growing up. And so
Really?
did Tracy Letts, the writer.
Yeah.
One of my best friends was a detective, a homicide detective in New York for 20 years. And he was also a hitman for the Italian mob.
Wow.
And if you had met this guy, Tom, you'd let him babysit with your kids, as I did.
Yeah,
He used
really?
to stay with my son. And I introduced him to my wife years later, and she thought he was the most wonderful man, Uncle Mort, we called him. And I never told her. Years later, I said, let me tell you about Uncle Mort and see if this changes your opinion of
Uncle
him.
Mortician.
And, there was a certain amorality about a lot of the people that I've known over the years. They don't have the same censors or moral standards that some of the rest of us do.
Yeah. And you seem to revel in that kind of, that amoral status, that it's hard to, your characters are rarely black and white in anything that you've done. They're always shades, very curious shades of almost perverse gray.
Well, like Shakespeare, I mean, Hamlet is a murderer.
Yes.
He spends half the play planning to kill his uncle.
That's right.
And why is he doing that? Well, he's doing that because the ghost of his father told him on the roof of the palace in Denmark that his uncle had murdered his father in order to marry his mother. So there's a lot of perversity in some of the greatest works ever written.
Absolutely. So when are we going to see William Friedkin's Hamlet, Macbeth, some Shakespearean perversity?
I don't know. I've never been asked to do it. That's the mountaintop.
Yeah?
To be able to do one of those plays. That is really as good as it gets. And I would love to do something like that someday. I do a lot of operas now.
Yeah, you do. I noticed that. In fact, I was wondering, one of the things I liked about this film and a lot of your work is its hyper theatricality. I mean, it just feels like it's always, you're playing on the extremes of, sort of of movies presentation. And I was wondering if that was your appeal, if that was the appeal of opera to you, that they were, grandiose emotions, or what kind of opeperas are you doing these days?
I've done everything from Aida to Wozzeck.
Is that
And they're
right?
totally different.
Completely. Alvin Berg and,
And Verdi.
Verdi.
But, that's why I can cast somebody like Emile, who's also out there. He's far out, and he is not afraid to go to the darker places.
Yeah.
And an actor, as you can extrapolate on, an actor doesn't often get a chance to extend his range much in American film.
Yeah, Emile. Yeah, what's it like working first with somebody like, he's sort of a giant, in his field. What's it like working with him on something that's so immediate and so direct? I don't know. I can't think of another actor who's gotten more beat up, physically beat up, than you in Killer Joe.
It was, believe it or not, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a really great time with Billy, and all the intensity and energy of the script and his direction, and just getting to hang out with him and work with him was always an adventure. And it was a quick, fast, and furious shoot, and the rest of the cast, we all kind of banded together as a team, and I just, I think that I'd studied Hamlet a little bit in the 2 years prior to making Killer Joe.
Huh.
For a project that didn't end up happening. So I think that world and that character kind of got me a little ready for Chris and trying to go into that, because he did remind me a lot of Hamlet in the sense that he's kind of always going back and forth on should he do it or should he not do the murder, and he's very unsure of himself, and that aspect of the character reminded me of Hamlet.
I had no idea we'd have such a discussion of Hamlet in the course of a Killer Joe. I like that
Killer
connection.
Joe is a great script.
Yes.
It's a great contemporary script, and it deals with some of the same things in a contemporary way. And it's very immediate, as Emile says. But look, it is an acquired taste.
Yeah.
I will say that. When you say it's funny and it's a comedy, you don't mean the Three Stooges.
No, thank God. Yeah, in fact, one of the things, in addition to Shakespeare, one of the things that it really reminded me of is it felt like a hyperactive Harold Pinter play. That scene where you guys all have that dinner table, where it's like a mockery of the all-American table where everyone holds hand and offers
That's exactly right. It's a takeoff on Norman Rockwell's America.
Yes.
When we were told in the 40s and 50s that the American family was perfect, and functional.
Yeah.
And we now realize that most families are dysfunctional, unfortunately. But we were told that everybody loved everybody else and there was no friction. And in my particular family, divorce would have been a major scandal. It didn't happen in our family.
Yeah.
And now it's a cottage industry for lawyers, we realize. People get married, they swear to live together forever, never to part, in sickness or in health, whatever, and they're divorced like that. And some of the guys who are scoring the most money in this society are the divorce lawyers.
This film, are you proud of the tag NC-17? What's your take, or what do you make of that?
I think we're not targeting 13-year-olds with this film.
Clearly.
But it should be up to the parent whether they want to take their kid. I mean, this director, you ever heard of J.J. Abrams?
Oh, of course.
He's a director, and he created a couple of Lost, I guess.
Yeah.
And
Star
I had
Trek
dinner with
reboot.
him a month or so ago, and he said he saw The Exorcist when he was 7 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it obviously didn't ruin his life. So it should be up to a parent. Now, Killer Joe's not for children. I have to say that. But I think the ratings board is a dirty joke, actually.
Yeah.
They have no legal standing. It's a self-governing body from the Motion Picture Association, and they have no book of rules. In fact, if they had a book of rules, I would never have made this picture. If I had known, or no one would have financed it or distributed it. But they're arbitrary, and I think it's become a meaningless bad habit. But there it is, and
It's the world we live in.
but the NC-17, I have to say, is not incorrect in a certain sense, because a lot of the movies that you folks out there see are really films that where they cut a few frames here and there to get an R.
Yeah.
And we didn't do that.
Yeah.
We didn't make a few token bows toward the rating board.
Yep.
But a lot of films do that should be NC-17. And you look at them and you say, how come this is an R?
Yeah.
Or even a PG? And that's because they compromised.
Yeah.
We didn't.
Something like Hunger Games. Yeah, in fact, you're releasing the director's cut right off the bat. You don't have to wait for the DVD release.
That's true. I never had a director's cut. Usually the film that I put out is that's it. There was no more. except for The Exorcist, where I put back 12 minutes in the year 2000.
That's right. Let's talk about The Exorcist. One of the stories that you told on stage last night was how you ended up casting Linda Blair. You were despairing of ever finding someone that could play that role at the right age. She's supposed to be 12, I think. And then in walked Linda Blair's mom with a little unknown Linda Blair. Can you talk about how that happened?
Well, they didn't have an appointment. She was with an agency that represented young girls, and they had sent in about 14 or 15 young girls, but not Linda.
Mm-hmm.
And her mother came to my office and asked if I would see her, and I said sure. She walked in the room, and I immediately knew that she was the one. And then I asked her a few questions, and she was extremely intelligent and fearless at the age of 12. And she said a few things that convinced me that she wouldn't be hurt by this experience. And so I cast her without auditioning her. I have never auditioned an actor. I went to Emile because I thought he was great. I think he's at least one of the 2 or 3 best young actors in America, and I was really thrilled when he accepted this part.